the trigger is pre-adjusted from the factory, and what that means is you'll have a second stage and it'll be very, very close to where you need to be. You cock your hammer, you pull your trigger. You'll notice on this one we do have a second stage. Here's the first stage. The trigger moves, has slack, and it returns. You come up against your second stage, a little bit more pressure, and the hammer falls. All right? In order to adjust this, the first thing you do is you adjust your SEAR engagement. And you take your largest Allen key right here, and what you're going to do is you're going to put this through what we call the SEAR tower. And I'll have a little exploded view here to show you this a little bit better. It's going to be very difficult to see here. But take your largest Allen key, you fit it in your SEAR adjustment screw. Now you're going to have to press down and press the disconnector down. You'll notice the head of the SEAR adjustment screw is not aligned to the hole in the tower. It's not supposed to be. We designed it that way. Watch your little leg of your Allen key right here. You just note the position of it. You're going to turn it counterclockwise, a little less than half a turn. You're going to pull it out, and you're going to try and see if you have a second stage. And in this case, we still do. So we're going to give it a little more counterclockwise. I did it a third time. And what I was doing there is I was removing the second stage. I'm pushing the disconnector down by turning that screw counterclockwise, and I'm moving it away from the tail of the hammer. And I just removed the second stage. Now we're going to go clockwise, and we're going to find the point where the hammer just touches the disconnector. You can only go in one direction here. You only lose the second stage and then you regain it. All right, so now just note your position here of your Allen key. We put maybe a quarter turn on it. Still no second stage. Another little turn clockwise. Boom, I have it. As you can see, first stage, trigger stops, a little bit more pressure. Now it goes. We need to add some SEAR engagement at this point. Very simple how you do it. Put your Allen key in. Note where the short leg is, and you're going to give it a quarter turn clockwise plus a little bit. So a little bit over a quarter turn clockwise. You just look right down on it, estimate it, give a little scooch more, and your SEAR is adjusted. You'll notice that your first stage is very smooth, very linear. As you come up to the second stage, you feel a sharp wall and just a little bit more pressure, and this trigger will let that hammer go forward very, very, very crisply. We make a line of non-adjustable combat triggers. The reason we have an adjustable trigger is that the adjustment will compensate for any tolerances that are not perfect in your lower receiver. In our trigger, you can work them all out and get the type of break on the second stage that you as a shooter want. If you want it to break like a small icicle, you adjust it that way. You want it to break like a carrot, you adjust it that way. It's whatever you want. You can make this trigger break exactly like you feel like it should. Right now, with this adjusted this way, the second stage overlap of the SEARs is probably 3 to 5 thousandths of an inch. A human hair is about 2.5 to 3 thousandths of an inch in diameter. So this is hanging on just a little bit less than the diameter of a human hair. It's very small. That's why we have to cut our SEARs with a wire EDM, cuts them razor sharp, puts a beautiful fine finish on it, and allows us to have a trigger that can be adjusted to these types of very small clearances. Next step is to adjust your second stage weight. You take your smallest Allen key and you look at the screw that's in front of your SEAR screw, and From the factory, this is slightly below flush with top of the disconnector. If you turn it in clockwise, you get a little bit more on the second stage. If you turn it counterclockwise, it lessens it. Now you can move it, and you can just try this and get the second stage weight to your liking. Right here, I'd say this is about 1 pound, which is pretty much appropriate for a tactical rifle, sniper rifle. We'll take a little bit more out of that. I just gave it about a 1/4 turn, counterclockwise. I'd say this here is about 0.8 of a pound. That's the beauty of a second stage. You have safety, reliability, forgiveness, and performance all in one package. You cannot design a trigger to have a 0.8 or about a 14-ounce break on the second stage with a single stage trigger. It's impossible to do. The trigger would be unsafe, it would be unreliable. With a 2-stage, you have a very generous overlap of the SEAR surfaces. As you pull through the first stage, that overlap decreases. That overlap right there is what controls how sharp your trigger is. On the high-speed trigger, that's adjusted with that SEAR. Come all the way out here for your icicle type break, move it in a little bit if you like it like a carrot. The weight differential to pull that off is what we call the second stage. That's what we just adjusted. If you have a very linear first stage, which is a hallmark of our triggers, the difference between the first and second stage is very noticeable. The human finger can pick that up very, very quickly. You might think that having a 14-ounce second stage would be impossible to control, that your finger would go right through it. It's not. The human finger can pick up that difference very easily. It's like driving along a perfectly smooth asphalt road and you hit a small bump. You can pick that out. In a stock trigger, the road's full of bumps. As you're bouncing along from one to the other, you don't really notice one bump over the other. It's just a rough road. With our trigger, the first stage is perfectly smooth. The second stage is very discernible. This DMR trigger can be adjusted on the second stage from about 8 ounces on the lowest to probably about a pound, 1.1 or so on the maximum. You might be able to get to 1.3. But either way, you're not going to get a 2-pound or 3-pound second stage out of this. A 1-pound second stage is essentially a 1-pound trigger. 8 ounces, very, very good for bench rest shooting, varmint shooting. The match rifle version can go even lower. We can get 6 ounces out of a match rifle version. You can even go down to 4. Service rifle, you're generally running 0.8 to 1.3 pounds out of it. There is an over travel adjustment on this trigger. It's in the nose, and that is your medium Allen key. We recommend that you leave that over travel adjustment where it is. Everybody has a different preference for how they want over travel. Some shooters do not want the trigger to move right after they break the shot. Others, like myself, feel that the trigger should be swinging back smoothly and not coming to a stop against anything while the projectile's in the barrel. Everybody's different. If you want to adjust this, all you do is take your medium Allen key, fit it in here, turn it clockwise, bring it down, and you're going to have to bring your hammer down, and you're going to have to adjust this until your trigger is just about 0.010 of an inch away from the front SEAR. You're going to have to look down and kind of eyeball that. It's not the most straightforward thing, but it works. Now we're going to install the safety. You have to cock your trigger. If you don't cock the hammer in this, you will not get the trigger in because the back end of the trigger is going to be up. You cock it, put your safety in, install your detent. Now install your pistol grip. And I won't fully install this because I want to show you something. Everybody makes AR parts these days. They're no longer made by just a bill spec vendor. There are some safeties that have a very small gap or slot in them. Our high-speed trigger is a little bit bigger on the back side. And it's bigger because you have to have clearance for all your adjustment screws. Dependent upon your rifle, dependent upon your safety, there may be interference with that safety with the sides of the trigger. Notorious for this is a DPMS LR308 rifle. For whatever reason, the safety's pushed over to one side, and it's just where the detent hole was drilled, because that controls the axial position of your safety in the receiver. Some safeties have a very small slot. If it rubs at all, and you can immediately see this, you can push the safety to one side and pull your trigger, push the safety to the other side and pull your trigger. If it rubs, it's very simple to fix it. And I'd say about maybe 1 in 10 might have a clearance issue here. Most likely you will not. You take a Dremel tool, and this has a cutoff wheel on it. They're available at Home Depot. Right here, you have a mandrel, number 402, and you have a cutoff wheel, 426. You can pick them right up at Home Depot for your Dremel tool. You have a slot. Turn on your Dremel tool, and all you do is just bring this down. And you will clearance the slot in your safety. The instructions show this. They show exactly where you need to remove material. They describe it completely. It only takes a minute or so. And you're not clearancing the parts of the safety that matter when you turn the safety on. It's not going to change how much overlap you have with your safety. So we're going to reinstall our safety here. Put our detent in. And there we go. You notice I didn't install the first stage, I didn't adjust the first stage. That involves bending a spring. Very simple to do with a pair of pliers. You just take your spring legs, you bend them down slightly to increase the first stage weight, you bend them up to decrease it. The way we have the trigger springs calibrated and made for each of these triggers, they come in probably right where you want them to be. Match rifle, you'll be about a 2-pound first stage. DMR, you'll be about a 3-pound first stage. For service rifle, you're right on 4 pounds. And right here, control your hammer so it doesn't hit the receiver. You have a beautifully linear first stage, icicle, crisp break. This is about a 4-pound or so trigger.